Welcome into HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm your host, Kevin McPherson. Good afternoon. I hope you're having a great Labor Day extended weekend. It's a holiday. Some folks are working. I know I'm working. I've got at least two articles I'm trying to get completed. I may add two more to my work list today. We've got this segment and some other stuff. Of course, I'm constantly circling back to my sources, or they're reaching out to me. Some combination of really just trying to continue the grind, which is what we've done following up that massive visit this weekend. Caleb Holt, 5-star, class of 2026. We went through about, just how it was, the way I phrased it yesterday on the podcast on the show. It wasn't just a home run. It felt like a grand slam. Everything from both sides of the fence, whether that's the player, his family, folks that are connected to his camp, the Arkansas perspective of it. It couldn't have gone much better. I don't know that it could have. And what we talked about yesterday, he's got these upcoming visits. The home state schools for a while, and by folks plugged in, think maybe one or the other is the lead here. Kentucky's been a major player. All these things we talked about, the Arkansas won the visit, but they were the first visit. And being so great, having such a great visit does not necessarily equate to ending up with the player. But man, have I been burning up the phone lines trying to get with one thing you always want to do when you have a lot of sources, especially good ones that are plugged in. You want to get other perspectives other than just all the folks that were just so close to it this weekend. And that's what we've been working on, because these conversations are going on in real time, and you want to kind of hit it when it's fresh. And so things can change. We got a few things to talk about today, but we're starting with Caleb Holt because I think this is significant. One of my NBA sources, and remember, I've had really good NBA source information about the college game, about recruiting, all these different things, because everybody in basketball is connected. A lot of these folks in the NBA are not only connected with the players and their families and relationships there, but these handlers, spring and summer, grassroots basketball program leaders, directors, all these different ways that you get information. And so they're plugged in. And so one of my better NBA sources, the one who told me when DJ Wagner was on his visit to Arkansas, was the one that told me he just committed to Cal. And remember, it was 2 or 3 weeks later in May when we found out, or maybe a couple of weeks after that visit, when it was going to go public. But we'd already told you there was a private commitment there, a silent commitment, and then it was just a matter of time before it went public. Several of these have been like that, where we've talked about the paperwork being done on the back end. That typically is only about transfers. High school players with still another season of high school basketball, you're not going to be having conversations about, well, they've been approved through admissions now. No, it doesn't work that way. That's not part of the intel. But this NBA source is telling me, the same one that gave me the update on DJ Wagner, got back with me and said he sees Arkansas as the leader now for Caleb Holt. This is where he sees it. And of course, I went there. I said, okay, you've given me great information on previous times. I used DJ Wagner as one example in the silent private commitment. I said, can you give me that? Is there a private commitment? Is there a commitment at this point that's, and this is something that's going to play out, but it's already been done. I did not get a confirmation or denial on that. I just got a repeat of what was said, that he feels like Arkansas is the leader and the team to beat right now for Caleb Holt. So that's an NBA source. And then I had another source. If you remember, we talked about this. This was intel leading up to the Caleb Holt visit that said his perception was Arkansas was among the top 2 or 3 teams, and that he thought Auburn maybe actually was ahead of where Bama was in the pecking order, whereas several of the sources out there, people connected to recruiting and on the national level, have kind of felt like Alabama's the team to beat. You don't know what's true or not true about that, other than anytime it's not, one team doesn't have all the smoke and all the momentum, maybe there's a weakness there for that, which is what we talked about. The fact that Kentucky, the folks that cover Kentucky, they know that Caleb Holt's visit is coming up, but that they keep saying, well, they think they lead for Tyron Stokes and they don't think they'll get both. So this same source that said 2 or 3, Arkansas in the top 2 or 3, and he thought Auburn was a little ahead of Alabama. Also, I circled back to him saying, what are you hearing about this visit? He goes, he also says he thinks Arkansas after this visit is going to be hard to beat. He said Arkansas is going to be hard to beat based on this visit. Now, it's not just about vibes and good feeling. All that matters. All that's important, but so is NIL. And what have we been saying about the Tyron Stokes situation? If Arkansas is really on the outside looking in, I've described that situation as being on life support with Tyron Stokes in Arkansas. And if that's the case, if Arkansas continues to gravitate away, I did have one of my contacts tell me that he heard from at least one source that he has that he thinks Arkansas is still trying to be in the mix there and trying to figure it out. But most everyone else, including myself, based on my own information, and we've talked about kind of leaving on that life support thing, not 100% ruling out or not. But if it's true, that frees up NIL money to pursue other big fish and package a bigger class together and still get top level guys. Let's not forget Caleb Holt. I've got second in the country behind Tyron Stokes. Jonathan Wasserman, NBA draft guru for Bleacher Report, we talk about all the time, has those two guys going 1-2 after being one and dones in 2 years for the 2027 NBA draft. So a guy like Caleb Holt, maybe you can sprinkle some of that love. If Arkansas is the leader, it's all about John Calipari, his ability to deliver players to the NBA, put them in situations that spotlight them in the year that he has them. If in fact they end up being a one and done, which he's got a great track record with that, and then he helps develop his guys. You see how much success they have after they're drafted and once their careers get going. A lot of that has to do with the foundational stuff that he helps with them in that transition from high school to 1 year at a much bigger level, and then you go to the ultimate, right? So it's not just about, he identifies guys that are already projected to be one and dones. That used to be kind of the thinking, but the truth is there are other coaches that do that too, not on the level he has and not as much number. But if you look at the results later, his track record's even better based on what guys do later. So he's got all that to sell. But I think what this tells me is when you're starting to hear people stir in the background that have some that are connected to some of this, but they're not directly in these camps and they're already hearing that maybe Arkansas is the team to beat, it tells me that NIL offer must be pretty damn good as well. That's where I don't have a number, but just doing this job and things moving that quickly, that's got to be part of it. Now, I have not named Arkansas the leader for anybody outside of J.J. Andrews when that was going down. The week of, I said on a scale of 1 to 10, I was an 8.5 for J.J. Andrews to beat Arkansas. At the time, I wasn't sure. I didn't realize just how much Missouri and for how long Missouri had been in the lead. And then in the end, when you hear that Missouri's upping its NIL offer at the end game, when it apparently became apparent to that staff that Calipari had made up all that ground. Remember, after the fact, I told you that Calipari in the last 3 weeks wrapped it up for Arkansas. But Arkansas apparently wasn't the leader up until that point. But at the end, Missouri decided when I guess it learned maybe it was going to finish second, which is the same as last, it jacked up that NIL offer and it put a spook in me when I got that information. And I went from an 8.5 to about middle of the road and said, if this is true, now it's on the table for Arkansas to either match it or get close or whatever they got to do to finish it up. And then the day of commitment, which was an afternoon announcement, that morning I got the news, no, it's Arkansas. Calipari, the effort he put in these last 3 weeks, knocked it out of the park. That's it. So right now, we're so far away from who knows when the commitment announcement will be. We're still far away from all the visits taking place that are scheduled for Caleb Holt. He just did the first one with Well, in this stretch in the fall. I think he took an Ole Miss visit before. But the upcoming stuff, Arkansas's first on deck here in the fall. So we're still, far away for things changing. And then obviously, even at the end, toward the end, if you're feeling good, I just used the J.J. Andrews example. You can get a jolt, and you don't want a Holt jolt if it's NIL. But this will be the first player. I've had sources name one source that said Arkansas leads for Erfan Diane, but most sources, people connected with it, think Houston's in the lead. Jordan Smith Jr., I've got one source, I talked about this when you brought this intel, that thinks Arkansas's, Calipari has all the momentum. Arkansas, if it's not Arkansas, who that source didn't know who's in the lead. They think it's Arkansas, but most think it's Duke. So I had more folks weighing in that I trust that think Georgetown maybe more than what we're saying for Arkansas. So we've said over and over again, while I have certain sources that think Arkansas might be in the lead or is in the lead, there's actually more talk from other places that someone else is in the lead. And so I've not been in position to name Arkansas the leader personally, based on all the information I'm gathering in real time. And then you try to make sure that it's real time and relevance, that it's not old information. So you're asking your sources constantly, okay, that's your opinion, but when was the last time you heard that? Has it been 2 weeks? Has it been 2 days? Those kinds of things. So you do the best you can to keep it like that because things change so quickly. You want to feel like whatever information you're bringing is not really all that old and it's not stale at that point. It's hard to do. It's hard to juggle some of this stuff and then try to land it just right. And you still got a lot of runway left again because you got Caleb Holt with other visits. So I say all that to say this is as close as I've been to naming Arkansas the leader for anybody since J.J. Andrews. Can I go with full throat and say Arkansas now leads for Caleb Holt? Man, I'm awfully close with a disclaimer that these other visits, NIL, all these things can reshape it. They can change it. Recruiting is like that. It's mercurial, but right now, if the decision was made today, I think Arkansas is the choice. I think if he was making a commitment now, I think Arkansas would be the choice. And yes, it was a great weekend, but I think it's beyond what Calipari can sell, what his track record is, the relationship. We've talked about it, how he's been recruiting him for a very long time. I've been Johnny on the spot at the locations where he's been to see this young man play beyond this past year. Before that, the live recruiting period that's about to open up midweek, Wednesday, 2 more days. Arkansas can hit the road. This time last year when they did, Caleb Holt was a destination for Calipari in that Atlanta area, down there to see Malik Thomas, other players. But Holt was one he consistently went back to see. This has been building. Holt, when I interviewed him back in May of 2025, just a few months ago, telling me, I want to visit Arkansas. I'm waiting for Cal to ramp it back up. He's told me if I want to be a pro, this is the place to be. He in my interview with him yesterday morning, post-visit, telling me he's talking up some of the same talking points he was talking about in May. Cal, it helps guys get to the pros. Now, it's not like that's some big secret, but why would you make it a secret? That's his strong suit, right? That's one of the strengths. It's a superpower for Calipari. So it should be talked about, but when you hear the players consistently talk about it, it's on their mind. It's got their wheels turning. I'm not surprised that, circling back to some of these sources again, that this is what they're saying. I think right now, again, we've seen players and you hear, well, there's a leader. I mean, remember Malik Thomas in the UConn visit. Don't ever forget that. UConn, everybody was on that bandwagon. UConn. And then what did he do? He told me he was postponing his Arkansas offer, and I reported that. We put it out on Twitter, probably on one of these segments. I'm sure we did. But there was no specific date given at that time. And then it was just like, oh, well, he's not going to visit Arkansas. That's what everybody else ran with. Even I wondered, okay, is this UConn thing about to happen? He tells me postponed, but maybe that's just, a way to, ease away from it and then make a commitment announcement. That never happened. Calipari got him on campus. What the player told me was exactly a postponement. We went through all that. He ends up a Razorback. But the point is that right now, after this visit, you got to put on, be objective about it and say, well, this was really, a lot of good stuff coming out of one with more to go. Now, one thing I learned, Holt told me yesterday that, told in this interview, in this media scrum, that he is going to, he has Kentucky next for a visit this weekend. He said this weekend. But the Kentucky folks, I checked with them, just some content I got. I don't know if this helps you, if it lines up what you think. But they're saying his visit to Kentucky is actually September 12th through the 14th. So weekend after this upcoming one, almost 2 weeks out, which is the weekend that Arkansas is going to host Irfan Diane, the 7-1 center out of Iowa United Prep. So it may actually be 2 weeks out. So a lot of things run through your mind. One of them is, if you think Arkansas is a leader, is it a strong enough situation where he doesn't take any more visits and he commits to Arkansas at some point? You can't take that out soon, like in the next couple of weeks or something. Or he doesn't say anything, and then the next thing you know, 2 weeks from now, when the Kentucky visit's supposed to happen, that doesn't happen. And maybe it's going to be rescheduled or something like that. And you start to think, I wonder if Arkansas has pretty much got this laid to bed, and you're going to hear something. The other part of that is the opinion today after this visit and maybe other things going on behind the scenes with NIL and all that. Other teams can make adjustments, especially if they're hearing some of the same things, and you think they probably are. Their staffs are not just talking to players in their camps where they can learn what they've got to do to make up ground, but they're also got their own folks on the periphery and the background that are drilled in sometimes, and learning that they may have to up the ante, or put another foot forward better than they already have so far. And so these things obviously could change. The visits will play out if they do. You got to think that a lot of places, a lot of destinations, and they're right now SEC schools again, Kentucky, then Alabama. In October, it's Auburn. He's from Huntsville, Alabama, so those are two in-state schools. Um, you know, they have the ability. We know how competitive it is in the SEC in recruiting in any sport. So a lot of these schools may make adjustments on their NIL offers. They may have something that is, exciting for Caleb Holt and his family, and it changes the narrative. And now Arkansas is not a perceived leader. I can't say across the board with people who are dialed in that Arkansas is a perceived leader right now. I can just tell you, two folks I talked to today and yesterday, combined both, that's the feeling for them. And these are really good sources that have been mostly right. They're not perfect, but they've been mostly right. So is Arkansas the leader? I'm as close right now as I've been on any player since J.J. Andrews, again, just to wrap this part of it up, to saying that's the case. And I do think the reason that's a slippery slope is because I do still believe as of now he's going to take these other visits. And so I don't want to give a full-throated, well, Arkansas is absolutely the team to beat. It's going to be, at the end, I think Arkansas gets him. I'm not there yet. What I am going to say is if he were to commit any day now, I think it would be Arkansas. So it's a little different. If that's me saying Arkansas is in the lead, that's about as close to a full-throated endorsement I can give right now. And again, we've seen this play out like this before with other players. I just used the Malik Thomas example in reverse order, right? It wasn't Arkansas perceived leader, it was somebody else. Calipari wins in the end. Remember, we've brought this up. Darius Acuff Jr. forever, it was thought it would be Kansas. He took a UConn visit after Arkansas, which, maybe had you shaking in your boots a little bit. But it felt like real momentum for Calipari at that point. I thought Arkansas was the team to beat for Acuff going into that UConn visit. I think right now Arkansas may very well be in the lead, and these other teams now needing to, I won't say completely regroup, but figure out how to maybe leapfrog back in the front. And if they're going to get him on campus again, if he carries through on these visits, they're going to have opportunities to do that and put their best foot forward when he's in their house. Someone's asked me, Kevin, will Cal get into a bidding war for Holt? I don't think so. I think, well, what he has done is he's had a valuation range on every player, and he is not going to do something insanely out of character to beat everybody else out. If somebody's going well above and beyond where he sees not only the value for that player, but what the other things he's trying to do and make it all make sense to build a roster, not just throw money in one player's direction. No, he's not going to do that. Does he have wiggle room? Does he have an ability to raise the ante to stay competitive and stay in the game with all of his other selling points, adding a lot more value than most of these coaches that are in the recruiting game and what their track record is with helping players get to the next level? Yeah, he'll do that. He's got some wiggle room to keep himself competitive, but once it gets to a point where you're really driving that stuff way up and it's beyond what your plan is, not only for that player, but to build your roster, I don't think he'll do that. I don't think he'll get out of his lane and do that. Arkansas's got the money. That doesn't mean it's the most prudent thing to do, and it doesn't mean that it makes sense. You have to have a stopping point somewhere, and I think that's where things with Tyron Stokes put Arkansas in a place where there's still a positive to that. Because again, they can maybe shift more money without getting out of what they think is appropriate for other guys that are still high quality guys and right up there in the conversation for top 5, top 10 players in the country. So that's a good question. Thank you for bringing that. All right, nearly 20 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We'll get through some of this other stuff a little more quickly. A lot of Caleb Holt smoke, man. This is, again, I know I've already said it. I said it several times. This is as good as I felt about Arkansas's position for a player since J.J. Andrews. It doesn't mean that I don't feel good about some of the other ones. And Torre, I'm really strong on where Arkansas is there. Very strong. So I've said Arkansas is probably in the lead or co-lead with UConn. But this has happened, not that we've said this before, the recruitment hasn't happened in a blink of an eye, but the announcements of visit and it actually happening were like that. And you went from not being even talked about and perceived as a leader to now being there. I think that's the striking difference, and that's the striking distinction. Abdul Torre's been one where Arkansas has been really right up there for a long time. It's not to say, that's any less important than where we are now with Holt, but I think it's pretty striking how fast this part of it and this perception of where Arkansas is in it, that is, that is significant. And it's not surprising though, because it's John Calipari and a player he's pursued for a long time and with plenty of NIL money to do what he needs to do and what he considers to be reasonable. Remember, all that matters is what he thinks is needed and his belief in the prospect that he's going after. And so this visit never happens if he doesn't think that he's right there with a chance to do it, to close it. So we know that. We've said that. But I think just from a perception standpoint, until some of those things start to play out, Arkansas really wasn't there until the last few days. And we brought you that intel. One source says top 2 or 3. And now we knew that this visit was a home run and a grand slam, likely. The way I phrase it, it's what it seemed like to me. And now I'm getting more things that kind of back that up from other folks that are not directly in these camps, but they've got the right connections to have a good feel on it. And sometimes that's where some of your best info comes from, because people feel safer with some of the stuff they think's off the radar. I guess now it's not, but I haven't outed anybody. But this stuff is really fascinating to me because of how quickly it moves and how quickly it can change. This is how I feel about it today. In a few days or after the next visit or whatever happens, it could be, well, that's where it was then, and somebody ponied up. Kentucky's not afraid to do that. We know that, especially on a player that's just been on Arkansas's campus and that Calipari factor. Do I expect something like that? I do, but remember, what have we been talking about? If they really are throwing a big pile at Tyron Stokes, there may be limits to what they'll do for the next guy, where Arkansas doesn't have that part weighing it down. And I've told that they may not end up, even if, it doesn't seem likely they'll end up at the same place. Now, again, we'll see how reliable some of that stuff is. But I think there are certain weaknesses for some of these perceived front runners that Arkansas was kind of in a good spot. Let's go to NASCAR to shift into another gear, drag on someone else, whatever you call it, someone else's resistance, you're right behind them, and then you can pop ahead of them. It may be one of those things where Arkansas is shifting into another gear and is the team to beat right now. We'll see. We'll see what ends up being true. This is just what it looks like right now. Snapshot in time now. It can change. It can be different in a matter of hours, let alone days and weeks when other visits happen. Let's now get through the other stuff quickly. I appreciate the question, and I know I continue to repeat some of this stuff. We brought you intel that Arkansas was looking to send a staffer out to Europe for Euro Cup. Mika Murnin, class of 2026, 5-star. Then we named who that was likely going to be, which coach on the staff, associate head coach Chen Coleman. I am now told, recent update, that it's probably not going to happen. And before I could ask the question, I was told we're still involved. So the bottom line is when you start thinking about these things, you think, okay, maybe something else is going on in recruiting and maybe they're backing off. No, that's not the case. You got to remember the live recruiting period is not open just to go to Euro Cup. It's coming up Wednesday. You're going to be all over the country. You also are conducting practices, and you may be in a situation where you feel like, okay, yeah, we want to evaluate some other European players, up and comers. We'd like, maybe they're seen enough online and watching stuff with Mika that they don't need to go out there and see it in person. They can prioritize other things in terms of what needs to be taken care of here back in the Continental 48 and still pursue that recruitment. So the plan was they were going. It was kind of unclear in the beginning. Then they decided they probably were. Now they backed off of that. Remember, things change in recruiting. This is intel for you. Now you know Arkansas is not likely to go to Euro Cup, but they're still in on Mika Murnin. Top 10 rated 5-star. I've got him ranked 10th in the class of 2026. So we're going to continue to monitor that. But that's where things are there now. Okay, here's some more intel for you. We know that the upcoming visitor list is pretty lengthy, getting through September into early October. We know there's some other ones being finalized and or finalized. Hello, Abdu that just haven't gone public yet. All right. So the one weekend that's not accounted for a known public visit date is this upcoming one, September 5 through 7. The football Hogs opened with a win, dominant win over Alabama A&M. That was expected Saturday. Holt was in town, got to see that fan base. And then the football Hogs will be in Little Rock and War Memorial Stadium for what on many levels is, a historic game. First time ever to play Arkansas State. The history there with the Red Wolves, wanting that big brother matchup and, taunting about it and, whatever, trying to stir up as much drama to get attention and make that happen. What's happening? And it might be the end of the War Memorial Stadium area with the Razorbacks going back to 1948. We don't know. I have a source telling me maybe not. That's pretty well connected. Told me that over the weekend in Fayetteville. So we'll see. But getting back to it, the football Hogs won't have the fan atmosphere in Fayetteville. They'll be in Little Rock. But we know Calipari's not bashful about scheduling official visits in this time of year football season. And the reason you're doing a lot of that for the class that's about to sign in mid-November is you really can't bring those players in if they're making a decision to basketball season because you're just starting to play games in November. Yeah, you have some exhibition in October, things like that, but you just don't have a lot of time to entertain that late. You're trying to get your business taken care of now. And so every weekend, your team's not going to be at home. That's how the season works, but Calipari spread them out. He hasn't jammed them all in when they got a football game. And I'm told, I guess this is the intel, I'm finally getting around to it, I'm told to look for and expect there to be a visitor for this weekend. So can't go into details on that right now. I got to wait on that. So we'll see how long that wait is. We'll see if it leaks out somewhere else before, I'm given the green light. Sometimes that happens. It happens a lot. Actually, with some of the national guys that put out graphics, and they're the ones that players want to use. And so you just have to let it be. But Arkansas is now things change in recruiting. Again, something could change, and now it's off. But right now, I expect Arkansas to host an official visitor this upcoming weekend, which then means the way the schedule is now, that's 6 official visitors on 6 separate weekends, starting this past weekend, end of August, with Caleb Holt, visitor expected as of now for this coming weekend. Then Arafan Diane, September 12th through the 14th. That's the following weekend. Jordan Smith Jr., September 19th to the 21st. That's the following weekend. Tay Kenny, weekend after that, end of September, final weekend there. Football Hogs back at home again for the first time since this past weekend. Hosted Notre Dame. That's a big one. Tay Kenny will be on that visit and be in the house for that. And then you roll into October, that first weekend. The Football Hogs have a bye week, no game, and you got Cole Clower scheduled to come in. So, again, that's 6 visitors that we know about. Where we know what the dates are, but one of those 6, I'm telling you the dates, it's expected to be this upcoming weekend, September 5th through 7th, just not named yet. All right, so here's the other part. We know Arkansas, and I've been reporting this, the intel is finalizing visit dates with guys like Baba Aladdin, top 10 rated 5-star in 26 after recently reclassing from 27 when he was the number 1 recruit. Chase Foster, another one Arkansas is finalizing. I have a source that tells me with Aladdin, they think it may already be finalized. I haven't gotten it confirmed on where I get that stuff confirmed that it is in fact finalized, but it probably is. And then again with Chase Foster, if they are still efforting that and working that out, it may have something to do with other recruits and how they're trying to puzzle that together and get guys in. I haven't gotten any sniff that maybe that one actually is finalized right now. And again, we keep talking about Abdu Torre. I know the dates on that. Now that could change, but I can't put that out, and that's going to be on him. And it might be one of those deals where he just piecemeals his visit dates the week of the visit that's about to happen, because he did that with Providence. It came out early in the week, just like with Caleb Holt, came out on a Monday, and then he visited the weekend at the end of the week, or that week when it came out. That's what went down with Torre in Providence last week. So it may be for him one that he just gradually does it as he goes. Caleb Holt, for the Arkansas part, splash week of but some of the other dates have been out there already for some of the other visits that are upcoming, like Auburn, October 13th. So there's more than one way to get visit news out. Sometimes we just have to be patient. That's it. 30 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I guess in a nutshell, things are looking great for Arkansas and Caleb Holt. I mentioned yesterday when we talked about it how wonderful the visit was, grand slam home run, and you won the visit. That doesn't mean you're going to win the battle at the end. As of today, a day later, after gathering more information, I mean, I see Arkansas as the leader if he had to make a commitment announcement now. That's it in a nutshell. Long term, if he's going to take the other visits, maybe Arkansas is the team to beat with other programs having plenty to sell, having an NIL, who knows what their boundaries are for something like this, especially if they believe Arkansas is in the lead, those kinds of things. But maybe Arkansas is still the team to beat, and then you see what happens. So there's more than one way to look at that because you never know what a player's going to do. Again, they could call off everything and say, I'm ready to commit right now. So the folks that are telling me they think Arkansas is in the lead, we're going to be right. They might be right even if it changes later because it's in real time now and things change in recruiting. I'm at the point now where I'm effectively calling Arkansas the leader here. And this is as strong as I felt about something on this high of a caliber top 10 rated guy, again, since J.J. Andrews. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. I talked about Chase Foster. Someone's asking about that. We just know that Arkansas is working to finalize that visit. Please hit subscribe, like, and share. That helps us out. If something breaks later today, I'm coming back on live. I know it's later in the day, late here, past lunchtime. If we need to do it, we will. If not, I'll probably be back on tomorrow. I've got something in the works. Maybe that'll be a surprise for tomorrow. Maybe not. We'll see how it goes. I do have a morning dentist appointment, and that's got me a little nervous. And it's going to have my dentist nervous too when I go in there and tell him, hey, the thing I'm coming in for, multiply that times 2. I got something else going on. So we'll see what happens there, but I might have a surprise later in the day if I can get through that. And typically I soldier through things like that. But if I had to pick doctor or dentist, I'm always going to pick doctor for whatever reason. The dentist thing's like, it's just one of those things that, if you don't like snakes, you don't like spiders. Well, and when it comes to health, for whatever reason, even if I think it might be bad news, I'd rather go see the doctor than the dentist. All right, too much information. All right, okay, well, that's a great way to sign off. Thanks for being here. Appreciate all of you. Be great in all your endeavors today. Moving forward, enjoy this Labor Day. See you soon.